This
Good
meeting
evening
is
and
being recorded.
good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. I have a brand new guest on. His name is Jim Sisco. He has served in the Marine Corps and Navy for 23 years. He did 4 combat tours, including Desert Storm, and 3 tours in Afghanistan. He has a 90% disability rating from the VA, which includes PTSD. He was married to his ex-wife for 11 years. There was never any physical or mental abuse with her or the children. He was a model father the whole entire time, taking them on family vacations twice a year, camping trips, participated in their extracurricular activities, and teaching them values and integrity. His ex-wife filed for divorce and gave him primary custody of 2 of the 3 children, splitting up the kids. She made no attempts to resolve the matter amicably or co-parent in any way whatsoever. While his youngest daughter was in his ex-wife's care, she threatened to hurt herself 6 days before her 9th birthday. He found out all of this through his lawyer several days later. On his daughter's birthday, his ex-wife would not even allow her to see her father or her other siblings. When he went to court for the custody trial, he represented himself. The judge delivered the most extreme case of judicial bias imaginable. Now, the judge had issues of his own, and we will discuss that later. He granted full legal custody of all 3 children to his ex-wife and made him undergo a psychological examination, a 14-week parenting course, anger management course, and awarded $25,000 in legal fees. He completed all of the requirements, went back to court to get custody, and the judge threw the motion out and awarded $30,000 in legal fees, claiming there was no material change and that he continued to conduct parental alienation. The judge ruled in the first case that this was a cooling off period to allow the mother to reconnect with the children. Since then, the father has appealed the ruling and has submitted another motion to modify custody and visitation, which his ex-wife's lawyer objected to. He's waiting on the court's decision to hear the case. Now, he has no physical contact with any of the 3 children in almost 15 months. His interactions are limited to 30-minute Skype calls on Sunday evenings from 6:30 to 7 p.m. The Skype calls are monitored and recorded by his ex-wife, who ends them regularly without warning or notice. And she has not allowed the father to see his children on Christmas, New Year's Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, and probably Father's Day. He has sent over 70 emails requesting increased communications or in-person visits through lawyers and paralegals, the majority of which were not responded to, with no increase in communication or in-person visitation. And I welcome you to the show, Jim. Where are you at now with this case?
I wish I knew, Marianne. Like I said, I'm still waiting to hear from my lawyer, who went to court on Friday to see if we could have the motion to modify custody and visitation heard. And that was heard by the court on Friday, and I still haven't received any notice. But, that's where we're at right now. On the legal side, as far as with the kids, there was a period of time where I stopped Skyping the kids for about a month and a half. And the reason why I decided to do that, I mean, it was number one, it was a huge emotional toll on me. Just being able to talk to my kids, I look forward to it every week. But then, the Skype calls were always, I mean, at the last 14 Skype calls, 12 of them were interrupted early. I remember the last Skype call I had with my children. I sat down and I made a decision that I was going to end the Skype calls because the lawyers were reviewing it, the therapist was reviewing it, and each Skype call was costing about $400. So we're talking about, 4 times, $1,600, $1,500 a month just to talk to my kids. which I looked at, it was like blackmail.
Mhm.
And the fact that every time that I said anything, put under a microscope and dissected. You said this in the Skype call, or you said this, or you violated the court order. So it became really difficult to do that. So I decided to end the Skype calls, and the day the Skype call that I had with my children, I started off using a lot of the things that I learned in the parenting class, and talking to a therapist and learning about parental alienation. I said, hey kids, I love you. I want you to understand that none of this is your fault. I want you to understand that I love being your dad. I miss you. I want to be with you every day. I want to be a part of your lives. One of the greatest things that I find is being a dad in your life. And it was very emotional for me and trying to say this. And I'm like, I can't explain, to you now why I do this, but I want you to understand that I'm unable to Skype with you any longer. But there'll come a point in your lives where I'll be able to tell you. And my ex-wife turned the computer app away from the kids, looked at me, and hung up the Skype call. And that was the last time I spoke with him until this Sunday. And this Sunday, I had asked my lawyer, hey, can you ask for the Skype calls and not to be recorded and not to be, monitored? And he gave me a hard time. He said, ethically, I'm opposed to this. And, I'm the client at the end of the day. I don't care what your ethics, where your stance is. If it's a request from a client, you do it. So finally, I just reached out to my ex-wife and asked her if I could talk to our children. And she wouldn't allow it at first. And then she said, well, I can do it from 4 to 4:30. So I had my first Skype call with him this Sunday. I talked
Oh,
to him for
good.
half an hour, and it was great to talk to him. But once again, I reinforced that I miss them. I love them. I love being their dad. I can't wait to be a part of their lives again. I really miss them. I think about them every day. And I even asked them, if they missed me. And I said, hey, it's okay if you can tell me about it, because it feels good for me to hear you guys say that you miss me and you love me. And
Mhm.
they did, but you can tell they're looking at my ex-wife, and,
Mhm.
she's prompting them. So, it's a terrible situation, but, I'll just say this, and then, I'll move on. I did 4 combat tours, and in combat, you're under an immense amount of anxiety and stress on a daily basis. And I can honestly tell you that in combat, you can fight. You can go kill somebody, or you can go shoot somebody. And this situation is 10 times worse than anything I've dealt with in combat, because of the personal nature, that my kids are involved, and the fact that I can't do anything. As a man, I am helpless.
Mhm.
And the things that I want to do, and the things that I can do as a former special forces operator and a former intelligence officer, I can't utilize my resources or my training to do anything that, because then I'd be in jail.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's kind of where I'm at, and I just hope people understand this situation, and I don't want other people being in this situation, because people who haven't had my training or experience or things like that, I can see how their lives spiral out of control, like from the financial piece to the emotional piece to the stress, and I've experienced a lot of that personally, and I get through it. I just walk every day.
Now, how can a young person avoid getting into this situation? If you were gonna give even your daughter advice, or if you had a son, give him advice, what would you tell them?
That's a great question. For my childhood, I was raised in a family where my mother was married 3 times and my father was married 3 times. I spent the majority of my childhood living with my grandparents. It was a very toxic environment.
Mhm.
My father would say that my mom was a piece of shit and that she gave us up, and my mom would say that my dad was an asshole and that he stole us. And in that time, you don't know, because you're a kid, and
Mhm.
there's no facts and there's no evidence and emails and things like that. So for me personally, I decided, when I got married, I was just going to do it once. I didn't want to put my children through that. So I didn't get married till I was 40. And I had just gotten out of a really toxic relationship with a very attractive woman. And my friends were always saying, you need to settle down. Most of my friends were married and had children, or married and had children and divorced. And so I met my ex-wife, and she wasn't the kind of what, and I overlooked a lot of things that I shouldn't have because I was in a rush to get married.
Mhm.
And I will tell people, the two pieces of advice that I have is, number one, if you do get married, sign a prenup, because you can never plan for the future, and you need to protect yourself and
Mhm.
your financial future, and things like that, and your equities. And number two, look for the characteristics and traits that are very important in a relationship. In a relationship, when you're married, you're going to fight over three things. You're going to fight over finances, sex, and children.
Mhm.
And if you're not compatible with your parenting beliefs and ideas, and if you're not compatible sexually, and you disagree on finances or you don't align, you're going to have problems. And for me, my ex-wife, when I met her, she had $30,000 in credit card
Mhm.
debt, and I took on that because I was willing to sacrifice some things or overlook some things because I wanted to get married.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, she came from what I believe to be, a very good, solid family. And as I learned when we got married, that was a mirage. It was a facade, that
Mhm.
there was so many skeletons in the closet, and that I wasn't aware of. But they painted this picture, a rosy picture. And then one of my friends at the wedding said it was like the Kennedys marrying the Clampetts. And my family was the Clampetts because we were from New Jersey, and her family was the Kennedys. But
Mhm.
as we learned, that didn't work out so well. But so the things that are really important is, and what I believe and what I look for in people now, is that the characteristics that they're very selfless, that they're willing to put their needs behind yours,
Mhm.
that they're motivated, that they're not lazy. You don't want to marry a lazy person. You come home and laundry's piled up, or that you're both motivated. You're driven. You have a common goals, and that you both are willing to make sacrifices for each other and put each other's needs ahead of your own. And those are probably the most important qualities that you should look for, or attributes you should look for. And I, was dating a woman, excuse me, for about a year now, and we recently broke up, and it was the same trap. I was lonely. I just wanted companionship, and I overlooked a lot of those characteristics and traits that were, for me, are very important. But now I kind of know what I want, and the other thing I want is, I want to meet a woman who understands my situation, and she is her and I can just be like role models for my children. This is what a healthy relationship should be.
Mhm.
This is what it looks like when parents, when people are in love with each other. This
Mhm.
is how they treat each other with respect and kindness, and this is what you can take forward when you go and see a relationship. And if you don't have all of these qualities and attributes, and you're not in this type of relationship, get out of it.
Mhm. Quickly. Uh,
Yeah.
and, your judge had issues. Tell us about, this judge having some issues and making rulings, not just in your case, but in other people's cases based on something that happened to him.
Yeah, so, like you said in the opening, I believe, in my mind, it was the most egregious abuse of judicial power imaginable. Taking a family and splitting it up, taking a father who wants to be a father, who was raised two children, and then removing all, all interaction with their children. That is just disgusting
Mhm.
in my opinion. And the way he did it, the personal attacks when he delivered the ruling, and saying things like, "Mr. Sisco, you lack any self-awareness, and this is the worst case of parental alienation that I've seen in 30 years, and it's tantamount to child abuse." And 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 what I laugh about is, I've done hours, and like almost 100 hours of research on parental alienation, and between you and me, it's bullshit. It's parental alienation in some cases is valid, but parental alienation is a hypothesis, an idea. It's a psychological, drawn up by therapists to make a lot of money, which is part of the whole problem with this family court system, and the nepotism, and the ways that it acts. But going back to the judge, he was vindictive because I went to court and represented myself, number one, and number
That's it.
two, And number two, on the first day of the trial, I knew it wasn't going well because when I started to cross-examine my ex-wife, the first thing I said, I took a deep breath, tried to maintain my composure, and I said, "Good morning, Liz." And I went to go my first question, and he yelled at me, "You will address her as Miss Sisco. You better understand the court rules of the court." And I was kind of like taken aback. It was like getting a gut punch.
Mhm.
And I was kind of, I was like, didn't really know what to do. And then I was like, okay, I figured it out real quick. And, I started asking my questions again. But as you get comfortable in your cross-examination, I just went back to, okay, so Liz, you said this. And he said, "That's the last time. One more time and you're in contempt of court."
Oh,
And I was, it was really difficult for me. So then on the end of the first day, it was a difficult time because she had plotted all this evidence. She had her father testify, her friends testify, and they blatantly lied about, a lot of things. And I felt like I was on the ropes, but, I knew day two was my time to shine. And there was one thing, I had an ace in the hole, and it was my kids, and they wanted to testify. They had been abused physically by her. They had been lied to her. My kids have been lied to by her. My youngest daughter wanted to commit suicide or threatened to commit suicide. So I had all of this stuff. I had body cam footage of the police came to my house the day of my surgery, and she called the police and said that I had become physically aggressive and crawled into the car and pulled my daughter out. And 3 hours earlier, I had just recovered from major back surgery.
oh,
And you can see on the police cam footage, she was lying. The cops were like, "Can we go in and talk to the children?" I was like, "I really don't want to expose them to this," but they went in. Kids are eating pizza and like, "Yeah, we love Dad." Yeah. They're like, "Okay, we're out
oh
of
my
here." So,
gosh.
I said to the judge, I said, "Your Honor, can I bring my children to court? They want to testify." And he looked at me and he said, "Mr. Sisco, that's the nuclear option. I would not advise it, and it does not go well, ever." And I remember those words. And so I went home that night. I talked to my kids, and we had like a discussion about it. And they're like, "Dad, we want to do it. We want to help you. We want to live with you. We want to be with you. And will it help you?" And I said, "Yes." So the next day we go into court, and the kids are outside. I had a chaperone with them. They were going to be with my next door neighbor until they got come into court, and then once they testified, they would leave. Called the school, called the principal, let them know they were going to be in court. And the judge, we just started the case, and I was about to say, "Hey, the motion," and my first witnesses, and I have my daughter Tabitha and my son Ryan. And the judge looks out of the courtroom and he says, "There's children outside the courtroom." And I said, "Yeah, Your Honor, those are my children." And he got up and he said, "The court's out of session." He went nuts and stopped the session, ran out, and he came back in like 5 minutes later. And they did some legal jargon with the other lawyer, and they basically said that the kids were not going to be able to testify. And that really was another kick in the junk for me. And I remember I did the best I can to present all the evidence, and it kept getting opposed and objected to this, object to the body cam footage, object to this, object to the text messages, hearsay, this and that. And it was really difficult. And so before lunch, I said to the judge, "Your Honor, I have a question." He's like, "What is it, Mr. Sisco?" And I said, what am I supposed to do with my kids? And he goes, "I don't care what you do with your kids, but they will not leave this courtroom because they will not be going home with you today."
Oh
And that's
my
before
gosh.
he even gave his ruling. Now, some background on this judge. So Judge Mann, Thomas Mann, he was, he had a great reputation. Everybody loved him. He was a very good judge, well respected. And several years ago, his daughter was murdered. His daughter was attending Mary Washington College, and her male roommate, they were drunk one night and came in, and they got in an argument and a fight, and he took a plastic bag and he shoved it down her throat. And then he took another plastic bag and he put it over her head and duct taped it around her neck and left her to die.
Mm.
I would never wish anything like this to happen to anyone. And as a father, I would never, if that happened to my daughter, I wouldn't know what to do. And anyway, the other thing is that the perpetrator, the person who killed her, played rugby on the Mary Washington rugby team, which I coached, by the way.
Mm.
So he took a time off and he went through therapy, and I actually know the therapist that he saw, and then he came back and they put him into the family court system. I mean, that's probably the worst mistake you can make.
Mhm.
And since then, he has made some of the most egregious rulings, not just in my case. There was a case with an abuse case where I think the individual was convicted by the prosecutor and got 17 years in jail. And he talked to the press about it and said that was too lenient. So the other thing is, everyone I talked to after the case, I went to try to get lawyers and family advocacy groups, and I would tell the story, and the first thing they would say is, "Who's the judge?" And I said, "It's Thomas Mann." And they would put their head down and shake their head, and a lot of them would say, "Well, I'm not going to take your case." And the reason why is, this is like really taboo. Nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody wants to bring up poor Thomas Mann, poor Judge Mann. What a terrible thing he's happened to him, and it was. But that does not give him the right to rule in the way he does on other cases and bring in his own personal biases and his own baggage. His daughter's dead, but does now he can separate my family and separate me from my children? And everybody says, this is what has happened is terrible in your life, but nobody has the fortitude or the balls or the guts to say anything. And when I did, it was used against me in court. He said this about Thomas Mann, and every day, there's not, I go multiple days. I think about him and what happened, and I think about the lawyers, and I think about the therapist, and I think about everything, and I think about how I want to get revenge. Not a day goes by that I don't think about this stuff,
Mhm.
and I don't act because you know what? He's suffering, but that does not give him the right to do the things that he's done,
Mhm.
and somebody needs to hold him accountable. And the only reason, he ruled the second case, and now he got an appellate position where he's now an appellate judge.
Oh
So the good
God.
thing for me is that he got promoted because he can no longer hear this case. But the bad thing is now he's in an appellate position, and I've appealed my second case with him, and hopefully he can't be on that case. But that's the thing. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to say, Judge Mann, but behind the scenes, everybody's like, yeah, that guy should be disbarred. And I will promise to everything I can do in my power when this all falls out, that I will make sure that, given the resources, I want him disbarred, because he should not be having an impact on people's lives like he does.
It's there's another case where a judge went through some type of trauma and her rulings were off the wall, where she did get removed from the bench. And I had just read this over the weekend. I think her last name started with a Y. Other people might know what I'm talking about. I'll have to get you the info. But how they're ruling, just because they went through turmoil, they still have a job to do. If they cannot do it, then they should step away for 2 years. They can afford it.
Yeah, I mean, but look at the judicial system. You look at how judges are appointed. They become gods.
Yes.
Nobody goes against and me even saying this on a podcast, I know I'm going to get a lot of negative. There could be retribution. Anytime I go in front of a judge now, oh, you're the guy who said that about Judge Mann. I knew that there was a lot of that in the last case where my ex-wife took me to court for contempt because she said I violated the custody agreement, which I did. I hadn't seen my children in months, and I sent a video. I made a video, which was probably the most agonizing video I ever did in my life, talking about the situation. It was like an 8-minute video. And I asked the therapist to have them review it. I sent them a text message saying, I love them, I miss them. My ex-wife took all this stuff, took me to court, said I wasn't paying for the therapist bills and let's please talk about the therapist right now
Oh,
who's seeing the
yes.
children. And what she did, charging $14,000 in therapy bills when she never came up with the objective of the therapy, a timeline, or anything else. It wouldn't even provide evaluations, wouldn't provide, I got my first one 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, and it was crap. It was totally biased. How could she give an interview, an evaluation, or conduct an evaluation and not have any communication with me? It was totally one-sided. And she has a reputation. I talked to a couple therapists,
Mhm.
and they said that this therapist has total non-objectivity, always takes the side of the woman and the mother, and this is what I've been subjected to. But anyway, I'm sorry I
Well
went down
well,
that
no,
kind of
she's also participating in parental alienation. She's also participating in child psychological abuse on those children, and she needs to be reported to the APA.
So yeah, her name is Dr. Mary Lindell, and when I went to court, I had emailed her and copied several of my friends, and my friends all weighed in. Hey, Mr. Cisco is this. I've known Jim for 20 years. Hey, I've seen him when they were married. Trying to be like, hey, you really need to talk to him about it. And the opposing counsel said that she felt threatened by these emails, although she never came to me and said that she felt threatened. And they used this, and Judge Mann, and I think this violates something. Judge Mann said that I was not allowed to communicate at all with the therapist. So what kind of judge is trying to rehabilitate a father or rehabilitate a family and then prohibits the father from communicating with the therapist?
Well, see,
So I
he
mean,
also is participating in child psychological abuse as well and
yeah,
perpetuating parental alienation.
Judge Mann empowered my ex-wife, gave her all of the tools to do this and the financial resources, because if he didn't award the $25,000 and $30,000 in legal fees, she would have had to pay for that.
Mhm.
And it would have been a totally different story if she had to pay out of her own money, or her parents, who are very well off, had to pay for her legal fees. Then she has there's no there's no accountability. And with the therapist, she is basically empowering my ex-wife and manipulating the children. I've tried to ask the children what she says, and what do they talk about? But I've heard from the therapist that when the kids ask why are they in their situation, she'll basically say, "Well, when parents don't get along, then a judge has to come in, and then a judge will and that's bullshit.
Mhm.
You know, my ex-wife won't do anything to co-parent. She's
Mhm.
being vindictive, and she's lied to the children, abused the children physically. I have audio tapes of an hour-long audio tape of my ex-wife abusing, my daughter, text messages, and they allowed this to happen. I actually introduced all of this evidence to the therapists, and they failed to put it in their evaluations or reports. It's disgusting.
And they also failed to be well, they're mandated reporters. She should have reported that.
You know what? And that's what I said to myself. They need to go to Child Protective Services, and they need to, this is evidence of physical abuse. And there's some stipulation in there about time periodicity or things like that. And they said that they didn't have to. And
Uh-huh.
I even took this to Child Protective Services. And the problem with Child Protective Services, in my opinion, is that they have these guidelines that they have to abide by. And is there immediate threat to the child's safety or welfare? No. I have a recording of this. I have a text message of this. Is there immediate threat to child's welfare? Are they endangered? No. Then they don't even want to report it. So the system is totally, it's rigged, it's gamed.
Mhm.
And if you're behind the eight ball, there's hardly any way to get out from under it.
Most definitely, and with you representing yourself, um, they hate that. They hate pro se litigants. They are irritated that you're not paying attorney fees and not paying into the system.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was probably the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life, and I realized that. And after the fact, um, I made bigger mistakes. I compounded that. I got out of that trial, and the next day I was on the phone trying to find lawyers, and I found a lawyer who said that he had a personal relationship with Judge Mann, and that his law firm hired Judge Mann when Judge Mann got out of law school, and he basically guaranteed me that he could take care of this, with his personal relationship. Which I was like, I just got out of court. I was probably in the darkest period of my life. I wasn't
Mhm.
making good decisions. Gave him a $20,000 retainer, and 4 months later, I was no better off. I had gotten nowhere, and it was just the typical lawyers going back and forth, emailing, charging me fees for the stupidest shit in the world. That if my ex-wife was just acting like a mature adult, she could have been like, hey, Jim, I need this, or Jim, can you do this? And yeah. But everything had to go through lawyers, personal property issues, because we were still going through the divorce proceedings
Mhm.
and, negotiating on a divorce settlement, which fortunately for me, I was able to, strike a pretty good deal. I mean, not obviously, but I was able to stay in the house and keep my house. I retained all my veterans benefits, where my wife has no entitlement to my VA, which she
Mhm.
was stupid for doing that because she was on my survivor benefits plan. And when I died, she would have got half of my retirement for the rest of her life. And she could have got a portion of my retirement. But it was acting out of vindictiveness and selfishness and trying to keep me away from the kids. She didn't care about it. She was just trying to dig and get everything. And so that lawyer, after 4 months, I actually let him go, and he tried to take me to court for $15,000 in legal fees that he said that I owed him, and we actually we litigated it, and he lost.
Good.
And then I got another lawyer, and that lawyer, and I'm going to go on a theme here. That lawyer was terrible. That lawyer was recommended by a friend, and the friend, it was actually his wife. They were both lawyers, and it was the woman lawyer that was actually the sharp. She was crackerjack. She was awesome, and actually they were going through a divorce, and at the time, and the male lawyer who I had, he lost custody of his kids. He lost a lot of money and stuff like that, and that was a lawyer that I retained instead of the female lawyer. And so we're trying to work through the negotiations and trying to get custody. And he actually wrote literally and filed a motion that said, Mr. Sisco is a trained killer, that he's using his training and all the resources available from yeah, literally said that, a trained killer.
Oh my
And
God.
utilizing because he adapted his training to this current situation, and he's doing everything he can to neutralize his ex-wife. And I
Oh,
read the motion and I said, what the fuck are you doing?
right?
Remove this motion immediately. And this
Oh
is
my
when I was
God.
going to the VA and trying to get my PTSD claim done and trying to, you know, so when I have a disdain for family lawyers. I mean, and I talk to lawyers who are corporate lawyers for my work, and they say that family lawyers are like the bottom of the barrel.
Oh,
They're
yes.
the they're the scum suckers, they're the leeches, they're the parasites, and they take vulnerable people like myself and they extort them. Let
Yes.
me charge you every 6 minutes. I do an email. Let me charge you for a phone call. Oh, I talked to the other opposing counsel for an hour, and I put certain stipulations in place. I will be copied or blind copied on every email. And if you're going to have a phone call with the opposing counsel, I'm going to be on it.
Mhm.
They're like, well, you can't tell me what to do. I'm like, no, this is how I'm going to run this show because I've been dragged through the mud and gotten $30,000 legal fees and for, legal call with opposing counsel. What'd you talk about? The weather?
Yeah,
You
right,
know?
golfing.
Yeah. So you can see like all of these things compounding and where I'm at right now, and and why I'm so frustrated. Why has there nobody who can come out and say, I need to help this guy?
Mhm.
I'm going to either represent him pro bono, or I'm going to be part of an advocacy group, or I'm going to go contact a therapist. I've had my family, my brother, my sister, friends try to reach out to my ex-wife, not threatening, but be like, Liz, do you understand what you're doing to your kids?
Mhm.
She refuses to take any calls from my brother or my sister, receive text messages. My sister would send cards for Christmas
Mm.
and for Thanksgiving and for Halloween, and they would be returned. She has eliminated all or any type of possible interaction with my family and my friends with my children. So, and I'm the parental alienator, and it's disgusting.
And this is proof that there is parental alienation because your ex is doing this to your immediate family members as well.
Yeah, I mean, my brother has tried to text and call my ex-wife saying, hey, I really want to talk to the kids. They had a very good relationship where my brother would come here from Texas and the kids would be all over him the entire weekend.
Yeah.
We actually went to Texas and stayed with him for for a week, and they loved it, and no interaction whatsoever.
That's a shame. You know, it's it's a shame also with the go going back to the therapist that she was not trained in child psychological abuse. Do you know what her training was or her PhD was in?
No, I mean her name is Dr. Mary Lindell, and I don't mean to be mean or anything, but she's probably like in her mid 70s, uh, and I literally when I the first time I met her and spoke with her, I was just like, I just it was like I mean I don't want to be mean or cruel, but I don't want to say the things that I really want to say, but
Mhm,
from the first time I met her, I was like, who is this whack job?
mhm,
Uh, and what is I don't even want her being her physical appearance. I didn't even want her being around my children.
mhm,
She looks like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and
mhm.
and she would be a very scaring, intimidating presence to a child, like just on her physical appearance and her demeanor and the way she spoke. And like when I questioned her, what's your therapy plan? What's your timeline? What are your
Mm.
objectives? She literally said, I'm going to build trust with the children, and then I'm going to let them determine what their objectives of therapy are.
Oh, no, that wouldn't fly with me either.
And I was like, I was dumbfounded. I'm like, you're going to let a 12-year-old child determine what their therapy objectives are? In what planet are we living now that we let children determine what their therapy plan is? And why can't you clearly articulate your plan? Yes, I understand. And I said to her, I understand that as a therapist, you need to build trust with a child, but you will never build the trust with that child that I have and the trust that these children have in me.
Mhm. That's terrible. Why didn't she just retire? And,
It's
was
all
was
about the money. She charges $190 to review a Skype call, whether the Skype call is 5 minutes or 30 minutes. She charges therapy session for the children, and it's like over $1,000 a month. And one of the disgusting things about that is when my ex-wife split up the children, I had primary custody of the twins, Ryan and Tabitha. My ex-wife retained primary custody of Samantha. When she sees the children, she sees Ryan and Tabitha together, and she sees Samantha separately. And which makes me question, is she reinforcing the negative, things that Samantha was exposed to, and reassuring them? Because when they all get in a room together, that's when the truth happens. When my ex-wife took all three kids to laser tag, and she was so worried that my daughter had a cell phone and could call me, she left the children in laser tag by themselves to go out in the car and find where my daughter hid the phone in the car, and left my youngest daughter in there crying because she was by herself and scared. And this is what upsets me so much is my ex-wife. I don't have any ill will towards her. I don't want her, to, you know, die or, suffer some, because she's the parents of my children,
Mhm,
and I want them to have a healthy relationship with their mother. But the things she has done, I can never forgive her for.
mhm.
And the way she's acted is disgusting. No rational human being would take the actions that she's taken over this prolonged period of time. And this is what, when I go back to her childhood and look at some of the things that she's had to deal with in her childhood, now it all makes sense.
Mhm, mhm. And that's what we have to tell our young people about when they start dating and what to look out for. This
Yeah,
is
I
terrible.
mean, it is, but I can't, as a rational human being, say if even if I got full legal custody of my kids, I wouldn't alienate them from their mother.
Mhm,
I would say to the kids, and I've said it to them, we pray for your mom. Your mom's an important role, part of your life. You need to have a mother in your life. That's not happening there's no reciprocity. That's not happening on the other side. Your father's not allowed to talk to you. The court said that, and you can't do well. No, many people know that my ex-wife, was given permission in the order. The judge said that Miss Cisco, Miss Holtzman now, has the ability and authority to allow for increased communication and in-person visitations.
Mm.
She has the authority to do that, and she refuses to. So what good mother is going to do that? Especially when there's been no physical abuse, no mental abuse, that I've raised two of the children on their own. What's the precedent? What's the reasoning? What's the rationale? That is not a normal person. That is not a sane person, in my opinion. That is a vindictive person who is doing everything they can. And part of the reason why is she can't be alone.
Mhm.
She has never had any friends in her life. Her maid of honor a week before the wedding canceled. Most of her wedding party was made up of, family relatives. And the only friend that she has now is one woman who is not liked in the community, who has had issues with other parents and teachers, and they are two peas in a pod. And by the way, they have three children, and they're similar age. And why is she doing this? Because the minute the kids come back in my life, they're gonna want to live with me. They're like, Dad, we want to live with you, and she's gonna be alone, and
Mhm.
she can't handle being alone. This has been very difficult for me to be alone, but I have really good friends, and I'm very strong mentally, and I have a great dog who's my emotional
Oh,
support. And but she would lose her mind if the kids, and she doesn't realize when these kids come to an age and they're 15, 16, 17, 18, and I'm not going to do it maliciously, but I'm going to say, I want you kids to understand what I've been through.
mhm.
I want you to read this court order. I want you to understand that your mom could have let me see you at any time over the past 3 years or 5 years and chose not to. I want you to see where I tried to go to court and she objected to it. I want to see where her lawyer filed a motion to not allow it. This is what I had to fight for years, and I'm going to do it because what happened to me as a child. Your mom's a piece of shit. She gave you up. Your dad stole me. Hey kids, here's the facts. Here's 3,000 emails. Read them this week. Here's over 100 emails where, Liz, can I please see the kids? Liz, can I just talk to them? Liz, can I see them on my birthday? Liz, I just want to take them to our favorite Chinese restaurant for dinner. Never responded to, or lawyer not responding to it, or her not responding to it, or lawyer responding. Mr. Sisco is alienating behavior, hyperbolic bullshit emails. And I have a
Mhm.
story about him. And if you want to hear it, if we have
Oh,
time.
sure.
So this lawyer, when I was representing myself, one of our initial hearings, we went in front of a Judge Smith, and Judge Smith this guy's no bullshit. And I wish he was my judge in this case. We go before the judge, and the judge is like, can you guys go to mediation and figure it out on your own? And I'm like, sure, happy to. I don't want to get in front of a judge. We go to mediation, and he's pulling out this and all these stuff and trying to do his legal stuff. And I said, Joe, I caught you in a lie. You said it was going to be this, this, and this, and then you hand a different motion and you say this, this, and this. I'm like, give me the original motion. He's like, no, this is the motion. I was like, Joe, you're lying. Joe Menzie. And what happened? We go back into court, and he goes, okay, we start off, and Joe starts off, and he does this 5-minute soliloquy on all this stuff that I was supposedly done. And he gets done, and he goes, Mr. Sisco, and very clearly, I had 5 bullet points. He said this is what happened. He said this is what happened. He said this is it. Here's the truth. Here's this. Here's the evidence. And he goes back to Mr. Menzie. He goes, Mr. Menzie, what do you have to say? And he talked for about 5 or 7 minutes, and just basically just spewing crap. And the judge interrupted him. He goes, Mr. Menzie, are you done? And he goes, yes, Your Honor. He goes, good, sit down. You've lost all credibility with this court. And the judge ruled in my favor. And that was a kick in the balls for him. From that day on, he took it personal. And he did everything he could, not responding to emails, being unprofessional, hyperbolic in his nature, false claims and accusations. And it's all because Judge Smith said, sit down, Mr. Menzie, you've lost all credibility with this court. You just got beat by somebody who's not a lawyer.
Mhm.
Because and that has been an issue that I faced, because not responding to emails. My lawyer sent him an email 3 weeks ago asking about the personal property. He never responded.
Mm.
And there's an ethics thing that he's violating, in for lawyers, that you ethically have to respond within a certain time period, a considerable time period. And
Ah,
and here's the other thing: the lawyer who originally represented my ex-wife. She told my lawyer in the beginning that she had concerns about my ex-wife's mental health, and she removed herself from the case. And then Mr. Menzie took over, and those two are like two peas in a pod, two girls, and they conspire, and and it's disgusting. And once again, this is going back to the bigger issue of the nepotism and all of the backdoor trading that happens between lawyers and
mhm.
therapists and judges, and it's an incestuous kleptocracy
Mm.
that is disgusting, because the judge appoints a therapist, the lawyer knows the therapist knows that he's going to get the ruling that he wants, or the evaluation that he wants, and they talk behind the scenes, and the parent is left exposed to this.
Now, going back to that therapist, so she was court appointed? She was a court therapist?
No, the Christopher Lane was the court appointed therapist who did the psychological evaluation of me,
Hmm.
and, and has ghosted many people. You go on Yelp reviews, and people are like, worst therapist ever. He took my kids from me. He was
Mm.
responsible for this. Ghosted me for this is not uncommon. The therapist who is treating the children was chosen by my ex-wife and her lawyer. They knew what they were getting. Ooh, let's go get Dr. Mary Lindell. Here's a therapist who advocates for women, and always supports the mother. And I had no recourse, because I couldn't weigh in to say, well, do I have an input? Can we choose the lawyer together?
Yeah, that stuff was pulled on me. They had given me a list of therapists for my, one son, so they let me pick from 3 of them. Luckily, my attorney knew one that was good. He goes, "Pick him, call their bluff, and you call this guy up," and luckily, this guy was good, but how rare is that?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, you're in a different area too, because if you look at Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a therapist or a family lawyer. I mean, the therapy in Northern Virginia is commonplace. It's kind of looked at as, oh, you don't have a therapist? What's wrong with you?
Mm.
And, they advocate. I had a lawyer tell me, I believe every child should be in therapy.
Oh
I'm
god.
like, are you kidding me? It's the role of a parent, not a therapist. You can't replace a parent with a therapist. And that's what my ex-wife is doing. She's trying to replace me as a father with a therapist, with ADHD medicine, with her own father who, has these issues with her, and that I can't get into, but we can say that the behavior that I've seen with both my ex-wife's father and mother has been kind of, uh, how do I describe it in the nicest way? Grooming behavior that would lead you to believe that there's some type of abuse. For in Thanksgiving 2 years ago, my ex-wife had custody of the kids for Thanksgiving. She took my children to Thanksgiving dinner at her parents' house. And I had Thanksgiving by myself. I was really depressed, but I looked forward to. I was picking them up from Thanksgiving, and we were going skiing in Shawnee for 3 days, so I was kind of happy. I pick them up, and my ex-wife playing games. I'm not comfortable of you coming to my parents' house. We're going to meet at a police station off of
Ugh.
495. I'm like, okay, that's great for the kids. Kids come running out of the car. They come running in the car. I had all the stuff packed. I had the skis packed, and they're all excited. First thing they said, Dad, Grandma got so drunk at Thanksgiving. And I'm like, what? And they're like, Grandma passed out on top of us. She tried to make me rub her feet. And then that night she kicked Ryan out of bed and took Samantha's stuffed animal. And I was like, what? And I'm like listening to my kids talk about this. And the two things that got me. number one, if you're a parent, how do you expose your children to that? How do you allow your children to get exposed to that? And why don't you remove them immediately? Or, hey, mom, you've had enough to drink. You need to get
Right.
away.
Right.
But the father condoned it. And this is nothing new. Every time I went over there, they all drank. The father would pass out on the couch. The mother would get loaded and slur, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I never drank because I rarely drink anyway. But and I made the kids write this stuff down. I'm like, kids, write it down. I don't know any better. I don't have a lawyer. They write down. I never want to go to grandma and pa's again. Grandma did this, grandma did that. She tried to make me rub her feet. Same thing that the father did to Liz. He would come home from work and he would make Liz rub her feet. She told me this 2 years into our marriage. When I came back from Afghanistan, she just started unloading like all this stuff. Yeah, he worked at NSA. He was like really high up. Like equivalent to a 3-star. Everybody respected him. He was like the typical. And as I say, people who sit closest to the pew are the biggest hypocrites.
Hmm.
Here this guy is like, well respected, church guy, elder in the church. And my ex-wife starts telling me about all the stuff that he used to do. And that, she used to have to rub his feet when he came home from work. He'd have a scotch or a bourbon, and some other stuff that I don't want to talk about on the air. But, so then you see how it manifests.
Hmm.
And you go to Christmas and all presents everywhere. It looked like, the Toys R Us blew up in my house.
Hmm.
And then the things like he buys, the father bought my son presents and they were packing up to leave. And my son just packing all the stuff up in the presents. And he goes, no, 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 those don't go to your house with your father. You only get to play with them when you come here. These are the things that make me worry and make me concerned as a parent. These are the things that don't come out in court. But I really wish, and I've tried to reach out to both the parents and the family and say, can we meet? Can we talk? Can we, in the best interest of the kids, can we try to? Nope. Any email I sent, was taken to the court. Look, he's being harassing.
Mm.
And this is how the lawyers play the game, and this is how the judges, who sit there and up on their stand and look down upon people and look at 10 pieces of evidence and making a judgment on a person that they never know.
Mhm,
3
mhm.
tours in Afghanistan, Desert Storm, not a speeding. I had like 1 or 2 speeding tickets in my life, no felonies, arrests, convictions. Donated over 1,000 hours of community service, coaching rugby. You know, but yet I'm the criminal. I'm the bad guy. And it's disgusting because luckily I said to myself and I said to my friends when this all started, I will not allow this to dictate my character. My character will be defined as how I manage this situation. And it's
Mhm.
been really difficult. And I've tried to maintain my composure and my character throughout this, but it's difficult because there's a part of me that wants to go just tear somebody's head off.
Mhm.
And you know, and that's not going to help anybody. But those are just normal thoughts that anybody would go through.
Oh, yes,
And
most definitely. So are you pro se litigant now back again, or do you have an attorney?
well, I do have an attorney, and due to my financial
Okay, okay.
situation, I couldn't go out and handle. I couldn't go hire. I met with a really good legal firm, and they said $50,000 retainer, and we'll get your kids back. And I don't have $50,000 to go get my kids back.
Mm.
This divorce has cost me almost $200,000,
Oh.
and the legal fees for the custody have been about 150,000. And I just don't have the money to pay another legal firm, $50,000. And they're like, oh, we're going to get private eyes, and we'll get our own therapist, and we'll hire on this, and I'm like, what happened to common sense?
Mhm.
What happened to going in front of Judge Smith, who's a great judge, and saying, Your Honor, I just want to be a part of my children's lives. No, I have to go hire private eyes, and I have to go hire my own therapist, and I have to get expert witnesses and test. That's the family court system. That is the family court system in a nutshell.
Mhm.
It's not, hey, there's a father who wants to be active in their children's lives, but yet we have a family court system that will allow pedophiles, convicted convicts, drug dealers, and they try to rehabilitate and reunite these kids.
Mhm.
I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You have
Mhm.
a a father who's abusive and an alcoholic and on drugs, and you're trying to force the children to have a relationship with him. You have a father like me who wants to have a relationship with my children, and you have a court system that's prohibiting it. And you have an ex-wife who is empowered and not allowing it. And you
And
have lawyers who
that's
don't have the
disgusting.
fucking, it is. And this is where the family court system is broken. And this area in Fairfax, Virginia is a microcosm of the bigger picture, and it's a really bad. And I know that I'm doing myself a disservice because I'm going to have to go in front of a judge, and he could probably hear this podcast, or and then they're going to be like, "Oh, I heard your podcast that all judges in Fairfax suck." I'm like, "Yeah, you do."
Mhm.
I remember one thing that the Judge Mann said. I presented evidence. I said, in this binder, Your Honor, is 7 years of text messages that show how I cared for the kids, took them on vacations, not one negative text message to my ex-wife, not "you're a fucking bitch, I hate
Mhm.
you, I'm gonna kick your ass, you're this," not one. 7 years of text messages. I handed him the binder. He said, "Do you expect me to read this, Mr. Sisco?"
Mm.
And I didn't know. But given now what I know, I would have said, yeah, if you want to do your fucking job, read the fucking text messages.
Mhm.
But I didn't do that. And
Mhm.
now I would have said that.
Well, I did a podcast with a woman, and, she's down south, and when she went into court, the judge brought up the podcast, and CPS wanted to remove her kids, and he said, "No, the mother this is the mother of these children. She has evidence, and she will be heard." And it was like, praise God, and we went back on the podcast for an update, and he did a great job, and so there is hope.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I cling to, and this is the thing that's really disgusting for me is so many people are in this situation, or there's a lot of people I spoke with in similar situations. And what their advice is, Jim, you just got to cut your losses. And the kids are going to become 18, or they're going to have a voice, or they're going to be driving soon, and they're going to be want to be at that point, and you got to reconnect with them, and you got to build your relationship. And I say bullshit to that.
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Mhm.
That I, as a parent, am going to say this is really hard for me, and I've expended so much time and energy and resources and finances, but I'm just going to say, oh, kids, when you're 18, come back and find me. That's the type of that's the type of advice that I get because of from lawyers in this area,
No,
from
they don't
therapists.
understand. They don't understand the mechanism of parental alienation, which behind it is child psychological abuse, which is in the DSM-5, V995.51, and they don't care to read it. They don't care to look at all these things that are happening with these kids when they're placed with a child psychological abuser.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, I hope and very honestly, I hope my kids hate my ex-wife.
Mhm.
I hope that when they get to a point, they're like, "Why did you keep us away from dad?"
Mhm.
And that she gets to experience the torment and agony that I have experienced for the past 15 months,
Mhm.
or more than that, 2 years. I do. I mean, and that's not mean or malice, or that's just being a human being. You
No, and
know,
and God knows your heart. God knows, what you have been through, what I have been through, and these people, and I have seen other parents say, "Yeah, now the kids don't wanna be with him or her," and they've seen it, and it may have taken them 5 years, but they get it now, and, we have a great
that's 5
relationship.
years, 5 years of wasted time. And
Exactly.
my ex-girlfriend, she, when we first started dating, and she was amazing. She was an amazing woman. She gave me great support and was there for me, did a lot for me, helped me out through a really difficult time. And she wrote an email that I'll never forget. And I kept the email. And it said, you are an amazing father. Because she used to watch the Skype calls, and we were dating before the custody. So she saw me interact with the kids, and coaching and, talking to him. She would be on the phone and, hey, time to do your homework. Hey, I'm making this for dinner. Hey, like you go upstairs. Time. So she saw that. And she said, the time lost can never be replaced. The time lost of rugby matches, of coaching, of, when I hear my son saying, well, the gym teacher taught him how to throw a football.
Yeah.
This is the things that this is what you do as a father,
Mhm.
not a gym teacher or a Boy Scout coordinator or a fucking therapist.
Mhm.
But that time will never be lost. And each day that I'm away from them is lost time. And
Mhm.
that's what people don't realize. Oh, don't worry about it. Just wait till they're 18. No, what about the lost years from now until 18? I'm supposed to just allow 5 years to go by. And
Mhm.
it's real easy for me to go, you know what? Just turn it all off. Fuck everything. Go meet somebody, go date, have fun, not worry about anything. Here's my child support payment. Here's my child support payment every month. And Skype for 30 minutes.
Ah,
At what point does my ex-wife go, I am damaging these children? I am inflicting pain on my ex-husband and my children for my own selfish purposes. What person is going to have the fortitude? Some of my friends, I have a friend, Christy Mitchell, who I've known I dated her in high school.
mhm.
And she's like, it is disgusting what Judge Mann did, and it's disgusting what your ex-wife is doing.
Mhm.
This is a woman who never had children. Her only dream was to be a mom.
Mhm.
And she's like, what is this woman doing? She is not a fit parent, you
Mm-mm.
know. And anytime anybody reaches out to her, unless it's her friend, her one friend or her parents, everybody's isolated from her. But she plays the role, I'm a single mom. Whatever
Ah,
story she's told, yeah. And she gets, can you come pick up Ryan? Can you take him to Boy Scouts? No, why don't you call your ex? Why don't you call your ex-husband?
right.
He's right down the street. It's less than 6 miles away. Why don't you allow him to do it?
Ah.
Well, the court says he's not allowed. No,
Oh,
Liz,
yeah. Yeah, I heard that too. Mhm.
it's
I'm so
disgusting.
sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, I just try to stay positive. I try to do things. I mean, people don't understand what I'm doing at work, my job and my career, my business. I have a veteran suicide program that we're doing pro bono. I have
Mhm.
a community policing program I'm doing pro bono. I have a school violence program I'm doing pro bono. And these things I try to give back to the community. That's who I am.
Mhm.
And I'm going to tell you, this is probably the worst thing I had to deal with when I was at my lowest, and kind of like how I'm at my lowest point in my life now. People are like, oh, use your voice, say, come out and ask for help. And I did. And
Mhm.
lowest point, GoFundMe page, going to the VA, going to men's advocacy groups, family advocacy groups. And this is what I get. That's really sorry. That's a tragic situation. Here's a link. Or have you looked at
Ugh.
this website? Or and nobody stood up. My friends, they try to stand up. My family try to stand up, but nobody is like picketing at Judge. I want people protesting at Judge Mann's house. I want people, calling, my ex-wife and not to pressure or harass her to go, what are you doing? Or do you realize what you're doing? Somebody, a voice of reason or rationale.
Mhm.
Her family, her brother is totally against this whole thing, but he doesn't have the fortitude to stand up to his sister and say, this is wrong. It goes against the church. It
Mhm.
goes against basic parenting principles, but he doesn't even have the fortitude. And what do? They block me so I can't call them or text them.
Ugh.
I've asked, like, let's go to lunch or let's get a coffee. Let's talk about this. Let's be rational human beings and mature adults. Nope. And he doesn't have the fortitude to go, sis, you are fucking up.
Yeah.
Because why? Because it goes back to the father, mother, and the patriarch system
Mhm.
where nobody goes against the Holtzmans. Nobody says anything. Not Bruce, not Elaine, not the closet alcoholics, not the closet abusers. We don't talk about them. We have this pristine relationship, and the son is fit. He plays into it. Here's a story. My cousin on my ex-wife's side is a therapist. He's a PhD therapist.
Mhm.
And during this time, I would go to him, David Kleinschuster. Hey, David, I'm having a hard time with this. What should I do? Hey, Jim, think about this. Have you done this? Hey, what about the kids? How do I handle it? Because he's done with deal with this. You know what my ex-wife did?
Hmm.
She threatened his practice and said that he was helping me with the divorce, and that she threatened his practice, and that if he continued to help me, she would take it to the Virginia Psychological Board or whatever. That's the vindictiveness of the person we're
Mhm.
dealing with. Her own family, her own cousin, she sat there and threatened his practice.
That's
So you get
terrible.
an understanding of what I'm dealing with.
Mhm. Oh,
You know,
I
and it's tragic. Like I want to get my cell phone, which is right over there, and I want to play the video. I'm going to do this because all of this is hearsay, right? This is all like just one person's opinion. This is one person's, and I get it. There's two sides to every story, and somewhere in the truth lies the middle. I've heard
mhm,
that, and in most cases that is the case. That's the truth. Um, but when uh, you have actual evidence, and you can show, hey, these are the things that have happened.
mhm,
Um, it's irrefutable. And what I want to do is I want to find the video of the and this is a difficult video to watch, is when my daughter had threatened to kill herself, and 6 days later it was her birthday, and um, so I had taken the kids over to see their siblings, their sister, and my ex-wife wouldn't allow me or the kids to see her. And I have it on video where the kids are at the door knocking on the door, and she wouldn't let them in. And they're like, it was just it's heartbreaking to watch. Our text messages, saying all this stuff. So I wish I could find it. I'm scrolling through my iPhone, and obviously this.
well,
Oh,
we can do a follow-up. Well, we're gonna have to do a follow-up podcast as well.
I found it.
Does it show her face?
No,
Oh, good.
here. No, I'll turn the volume up. Right, Tabla trying to see their sister after multiple attempts to text and email. Liz refuses to open the door. Car has not moved since yesterday. She's home and just not answering the door. I do not understand the behavior. I do not understand why she will continue to isolate the kids from each other. And I don't understand why she hasn't taken Samantha in for an evaluation after she has supposedly claimed to want to commit suicide and hurt herself. I just don't get it. I really don't. But the kids are very upset. They demanded that I bring them over here. I told them that it wasn't a good idea. I don't want to get in trouble, but they were like, "Come on, Dad, please, can we please, can we go?" So, I mean, I'm perplexed by her behavior,
Hmm.
what she's doing, why she's doing it. Yeah, I mean, in this, I'll go to the end, please, where the kids come back to the car. Sorry, kids.
We knew it.
Sorry, Ron. We tried. All right. Let's go have
Hmm.
fun. We knew it. I mean, they knew who it was. And then, one of the other things, I can read you and then show you the text messages that I received from my daughter after the day of the trial, when the judge, just removed the children from my lives, in such a terrible way. This is the text messages that I get from my daughter. Daddy, help. It's Tabitha. Mother had her hands on me. I'm trying to grab the iPhone. Help, please pick me up.
Mm,
Uh, um, wait, here's the other one. Uh, sorry.
it's
Um,
okay.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult reading some of these. But here's the easy. Liz is the worst. I miss you and I love you. Please help. I can't do this. Help, help, help.
Mhm.
I'm going to die. Help, help, help. Help us, Dad, please. Are you there? Do you still love us?
Mm.
We can't do this. Help us, please. We're going to die. Um,
Oh, so
uh,
sad.
yeah, it's really hard to read unless they, when they say, "Don't you love us anymore?"
Oh,
And
no.
help, please. Do you care? Please help us. At least respond. Just say hi. We know you read the text. Help. Liz smacked me and hit me. Help. I'm going to call 911. Please help. Shorties with Christina. We're all gone. We're all going to die. Please lock us up. I can't live without you. Daddy, please.
Mm. Well,
So this
if
this
these
is this is what I get the day after, the day of the court, 4 hours after I leave court. And these are the text messages I received. And this is when I go back to court and Judge Mann and the lawyers won't allow any of this to be heard. They don't care. I'm the bad guy. I'm doing parental alienation. Daddy, do you not love me anymore?
uh, they got it backwards. Oh, I am so sorry because, if the one child went through, this horribly difficult time, and if something would have happened, thank God nothing happened, but I'm just, I was told that if you can't control your own kids, then CPS will step in and just take them.
Oh
And
my youngest daughter, the kids would tell me she'd take her shoes off and throw them at my ex-wife when she's driving the car and not listen to her. You know, and it's a joke because there's a woman who was given everything and all this privilege in her life. She's not a good parent, and I don't want to disparage her on a podcast, but she's not a good parent.
right.
And I mean, what good parent does this? And you want to see the body cam footage where she's lying to the police. You want to see other text messages. I have it all. I had all the evidence, and my lawyer goes to court, and it never gets presented, and it's just disgusting. And then Judge Mann, that guy should be disbarred.
Mhm.
Dr. Lindahl, her license should be revoked. Christopher Lane, he has an ongoing investigation with him with the Virginia Bar Association. They just should take his license away, and I should be able to go to have a civil suit and sue him for $1 million.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, even the therapist, I'm sure you could sue her. I mean, and also some parents are finding as they look into these therapists that they're not even licensed right, something to
Yeah, I
consider.
don't know what her license is. I don't know what her credentials are. She could have gone to Timbuktu University in Egypt for all I know. I mean, but now she's counseling providing therapy to my children.
I would
I'm
look
like,
into her credentials because from I'm hearing all these other stories from other parents, and they're really finding out what their therapist is. And, I just recommend always doing background checks. I don't know what to say.
yeah, like for me, I couldn't. Once again, this was a decision by my ex-wife, and so I just had to, as I call it, you have to eat the shit sandwich,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter how much whipped cream or cherry you put on top, it's still a shit sandwich.
Oh.
And I really wish that somebody listening, somebody would say, I got to reach out. I got to help in some way. I know a lawyer, or I know this person, or I know this, or there's this, group, or give me your GoFundMe page because, how can you maintain the last ruling? I have to pay $2,000 a month in child support, $2,000 a month for the court fees, $500 a month for spousal support, plus a mortgage, plus,
Oh
I'm
god.
underwater. And, and luckily, fortunately, some people have been able to help me out, but this has gotten to the point where it's ridiculous. And, I'm still waiting on my lawyer to give me a response to Friday, what happened, whether I'm going back to court or whether it got, the judge ruled against it and I have to pay more legal fees. So if there's somebody out there listening and, God willing, you're willing to do more than just send a link or, have you checked out this website? No, I don't really have the time to check out a website. I'm trying to maintain my company, run a business, uh, you know, pay for bills. And, I was in Iraq last week for business, and I woke up to gunfire
Oh,
uh, outside my hotel room and like, wow, how's that for your PTSD? And
right.
then I found out that it was the American Embassy has a range right outside the
Oh,
compound. I was like, oh,
oh my
okay, cool.
gosh. Well,
So, and the other thing is, this is the thing that really irks me is I have heard, over the past year and a half, we were doing PTSD and veteran suicide before it was in vogue, and now you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a 501c3, and everybody's out there. Speak up, and we're here to help. And bullshit, bullshit. Because every time I reached out, nobody stepped up. Nobody was out there to help. It's total bullshit, in my opinion. You know
mhm.
what? Put your money where your mouth is. Not
Exactly.
literally, but yeah, we're going to get an advocacy group. We're going to sign an online petition. We're going to bring this to the Fairfax County, court system to have Judge Mann removed. We're going to, go, petition the Virginia Bar Association to have Christopher Lane removed. We're going to investigate Dr. Lindahl. The investigation on Dr. Lane has been going on for a year. And they said, Virginia Bar Association, oh, well, the caseload is really bullshit. You have a
Oh,
person who's impacting people's lives like the way they are, and it's been a year to do the investigation.
whoa.
So when is somebody actually going to say, yeah, we're going to go do something? We're going to help these people out. Because there's people like, I'm a statistic. This is something that has happened to a lot of people like me.
Mhm.
But I refuse to sit there and be a statistic. I'm going to do this podcast. I'm going to go do these things. And you know what? People might not like what I have to say. People might, question my character, question my integrity. But people who know me will never question my integrity. They know who I am, and those are my friends, and I don't care what anybody else thinks. You want to form an opinion on me? Take the time to get to know me.
Mhm.
You want to help me? Help me. Don't just say, "Oh, what a terrible story." That doesn't fucking help anybody. How
Mhm.
does that help my children? Yeah, it's a terrible story. It really sucks. How does it help my children? Who's calling the principal? Who's calling the guidance counselor at the school? I can't, because the court
Right.
order.
Right.
Somebody can and be like, hey, or what's happening with these children? Oh, the ex-wife just put them on ADHD medicine and put them in therapy. She's a good parent. No.
Oh,
So there's my frustration. I'm sorry that, I get emotional, especially after reading, watching the video and reading the text messages.
mhm.
But this phone has hundreds of thousands of data points of everything. I can pull up 7 years of text messages to my ex-wife. Not one ever be like, you fucking bitch, I'm gonna kick your ass, I hate you. Nothing. Hundreds and hundreds of emails asking for her to please
Mhm.
let me see the kids. Let me see our children. Can I take him to hibachi tonight?
Mhm.
Can I take my daughter saying, Dad, I have a gymnastics event. I really want you to come. And I'm saying I'm on a Skype call. Well, ask your mom if I'm allowed to go. And what does she say? Don't talk to me. Talk to your dad. It's your time with your dad. And I'm the parental alienator. And
Oh,
then, don't talk to me. Talk to your dad. It's your 30 minutes with your dad.
oh,
Can daddy come to my gymnastics tournament? We're not talking about this. Talk to your dad.
jeez.
And I'm the bad guy, and I'm sure that, and here's a better one. I coached their rugby team for 2 years. We went to the state championships twice. Rugby practice Tuesdays and Thursdays, games on Saturday.
Yeah.
She had me removed from coaching. She said that, oh yeah, she had me fired from coaching. And then the Springfield Rugby did an investigation. She said that I was abusive to her in a parking lot. And we fought over a Krispy Kreme donut. It was hilarious. And my son's like, take the donut, take the donut. It was really hilarious. So anyway, they did an investigation. I couldn't coach the team or be around the team for a month. Not only did it impact my kids, but it impacted the team because now I was coaching the team. And So they, had to get with the other coach. So the investigation is over, or almost over, and they're going to adjudicate like there was no abuse. And I refereed a match. I go out there and they're like, "Hey, Jim, we don't have any referees for this game." I'm like, "Oh, I'll ref the game." She takes pictures of me. She was hiding in the woods, took pictures of me, sent it in, said that I violated my probationary period while the investigation was happening and had it removed. And they came back and were like, and the coach of the rugby team, or no, the supervisor SYC was like, "Dude, what's up with your ex-wife? She's psycho." And I'm like, "Dude, if you only knew." Then after the divorce and after everything happened, she sent SYC Rugby, and I have it because I had to get affidavits and all this stuff. What kind of organization allows somebody like Mr. Sisco to coach? I had to step away from coaching. I haven't coached rugby since.
What about suing for defamation?
You know what? I want to see my kids. I don't give a fuck about defamation.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who know me, the people I play rugby with, and coaches, the families, they love me.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, "My kids love you." What? And I'm like, "Well, sorry." And even the so I'm not getting into like I'm gonna go sue for defamation. I want my pound of flesh. I want my kids back.
Mm-hmm.
There will come the time that revenge happens, like for you when you pray that somebody's removed from your life, and they're removed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my hope, that is people will be held accountable, and that people's careers will end and professions will be jeopardized. Even if this goes viral and everybody's like has an starts going on Chris Lane or Mary Lindell or Judge Mann's Facebook page and like, "Dude, you're a scumbag."
Mm-hmm.
You go to sleep every night when you have like I have to go to sleep every night taking Ambien, or
Mm-hmm.
because I have a hard time going to bed because I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting there tossing and turning thinking about this shit. I want that to happen to Chris Lane or Mary Lindell or Judge Mann or Joe Menzie.
Yeah.
You live with this. You bear this cross for a little while.
You're
And
right.
I'm sorry, because I know this kind of sounds, sounds vindictive and mean and nasty. And oh, look, he was so good in the podcast until the end where he went off the deep end. No, this is how I've felt for 2 years. This is what I've been drugged through. It's glad that I can only just talk about it, but I want people to help me. I can't do this alone anymore. It's just it's too much of it's just too much.
Well, you've been railroaded for so long. Now you have complex post-traumatic stress disorder from the court system, which is also legal abuse, which can be found in the DSM-5 as well. This is terrible what
Yeah.
they're doing to you.
And like I'm not educated enough on all of the things that are happening to know what to do. So somebody gives me advice, or somebody says, "Hey, Jim, you really need to do this," or "Hey, let me help you do this," or "Hey, we're going to file a civil suit against this for you, and we're going to help you show you how to do it because you don't have any money to hire a lawyer to do a civil suit." I mean, these are the things this is why I came on today, because hopefully you'll be able to guide me in a direction, or somebody who's watching will be like, "Man, we need to help this cat out.
Oh,
He really
yes.
needs this and this and this." And that's what I hope for. It's not Jim getting on a podcast to say, "Woe is me and my life is terrible." That's not it at all.
Mhm.
I keep a couple things, perspective. I have really good friends. I know that this is a very dark period in my life, but I know that my happiness will be, in a year or two when I'm reunited with my kids and I can be a parent, and I can, when my, daughter wants advice on dating, or my son needs to learn how to do this for Boy Scouts, I can be there. That's what keeps me going.
Mhm.
That's what keeps me going every day. And the fact that eventually I'll find a woman in my life, and be able to open up my emotions, and have a loving relationship. My ex-girlfriend was amazing. I didn't think I'd ever be able to open up to anybody after what my ex-wife did.
Mhm.
And I opened up to her, and it really hurt, and it was very vulnerable, and but it helped me a lot. So
Well, there's a lid for every pot. So there's one out there for you. If I can find a good man, you can find a good woman. They're still out there somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to find. And there's so many guys I know who, who are like, I just want to meet a woman. There's so many women that I know who are like, I just want to meet a guy, and I don't know where their paths don't intersect. It's really, it's really weird because, I think that there's a lot of people, and maybe they gave up or they're on dating apps or what, I don't know. But, hopefully I'll find a woman and, who makes me, happy and completes me and is, my number one fan, and I'm her number one fan.
Well, when I got divorced, my mother said, no one's going to want you or your 3 kids. So I went to work at the hospital and we didn't have a lot of patients. So I just went in one of the rooms, I pulled out a Bible and it was Mark 22:11, or is it 11:22? I think it's 11:22, where if you believe that God can move a mountain, it will be done. So I said, okay, God, you're going to find me a good husband and I'm going to believe you're going to do it. Now, it's all in God's time, but 5 years later, it happened.
Yeah.
So, I just kept believing that this was going to happen, and God always comes through.
Yeah, and the only problem is God's timeline is different than mine.
I know, we're all like this, believe me. Hey, if anyone wants to reach you, how can they reach you?
I mean, I don't have a big social media footprint, and I rarely check my Facebook account. And but the best way to email me is through my email address, and it's jamesrsisco1@gmail.com, and JAMESR Cisco SISCO1 @gmail.
Great, and I'm gonna have you back on, so don't jump off. Salam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with James Sisco in the future and other exciting guests. Thank you for speaking out, Jim. Thank you. And thank you
You're
for
welcome,
serving our
Marianne.
country, too.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me, and hopefully, this will help some people, and hopefully some people will help me.
Okay, thank you.